Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for your weekly wrap-up. I got a lot of stuff to talk about this week, so there'll be plenty of discussion to come, but I wanted to first thank our newest Patreon supporters. We have Marco Idzan, Alexander Bontenball, who made an upgrade to his contribution on the channel here, David Bound, who gave through the tip jar, as well as Carmen Nooner, who gave through the tip jar. We'll be updating all of those names at the beginning of May for our end credits, and I want to thank everyone who has contributed to the channel on an ongoing basis and everyone who watches on a regular basis too, because all of those things, as I say every week, leads to channel growth and things continue to grow. So I want to thank you all for your support. So this week I did a couple of things on the Extras channel. I unboxed the Ubiquity Unify Outdoor Access Point that I'll be working on today for a full review. We also unboxed the Alcatel A30 smartphone, which I just reviewed last night or the night before, and we looked at a mini review, a USB Type-C adapter that is the same as the expensive Apple adapter for USB Type-C computers, but is only $40 from Amazon Basics. You can see that mini review up on the Extras channel at Lon.TV/extras. So definitely check out that channel and subscribe if you haven't already. It's where I dump a lot of things that I never used to do before, but I found people like the unboxings, and it doesn't take me all that long to do those videos, which is why the production quality on those is far less than what you see on this channel. So it's kind of a nice little outlet there, and a lot of you are getting something out of it. We got over 3,000 subscribers on it now, so definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Now this week on the main channel, we reviewed that $60 Alcatel phone, the A30. What's nice about this phone is that it's a low-cost phone that works on Verizon here in the USA. Verizon is on a different network type. They use CDMA for most of their communications, which is not what most of the world uses, which is why it's so hard to find low-cost phones for Verizon. But this one has an option available for folks. But I do think that that blue R1 HD I looked at is a little bit better if you are not on Verizon for the same price. I also did a didn't make the cut video. We had talked about this on the wrap-up a couple of weeks ago, and I did the video finally of 3 products that just didn't warrant me making a review, and I'm collecting some for the next edition that'll probably come out in a month or two. I usually am very careful about what I review to begin with. A lot of things that look like junk I just don't want to waste my time even looking at, but there are things that look interesting that turn out not to be so, and there are 3 products you'll see in that review, and many of them are off to a new home already, so be on the lookout for my store, which I'll talk about a little later in the video here. We also posted, or I also posted an interview that I shot with some folks from the Mocha Foundation. They are the people behind those adapters that I love that convert your coax cable into Ethernet wiring, essentially. I talked to 2 principals of the Mocha Foundation, which is the standard setting body for this technology. It's kind of cool to get people who are actually in charge of the technology to chat about it, and we shot that at the YouTube space in New York City in their diner set, which was really cool. A lot of you mentioned that the audio didn't sound as good as it does here in my studio, which is surprising given that we're at the YouTube space. And what's funny is that this set is out in the hallway there, and they have an air handler that's running, just a lot of white noise that I filtered out in post-production, and it's a little challenging over there. I'm going to try to find a different location to shoot at next time. What I like about this set is that it's a full-blown diner set. There's no props to set up or anything. You just set your cameras and lighting up, and you just go off and run. But I may have to look at some other options when I'm there next time, just because the audio definitely didn't sound as good as it does in here. So one little gotcha that you have to deal with there, but it does look pretty cool. I really like the set there. And I took a look at the EverDrive GB and GBA, and these are flash cartridges. We'll talk a little bit more about the controversies around these devices in a few minutes, but if you have an old Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, this allows you to put your games on a flash, an SD card essentially, a flash card, and run them on a single physical cartridge inside of the device. And it's a really useful tool, and I looked at how both of these devices work in one video. Pretty cool mixing of retro hardware and modern hardware, and it was really fun just going back to the old Game Boy again. I had found my Game Boy at my mother's house about a week or 2 ago, and I got kind of inspired to go and grab these things and do a test on them. And you know, I mentioned this a little bit in the video that I shot, but the Game Boy was a really big achievement for us gamers back in the day. It came out in 1989, around the same time the Sega Genesis came out, and it was actually interesting to see Nintendo, instead of just coming up with their own 16-bit console and rushing it to market, they really found a new market which didn't exist, which was portable gaming. Now I have, in my hand here, one of the portable games that I used to play with pre-Gameboy. I just wanted to show you what we had at the time. So what you did is you bought a device that was the game. And this is a thing called the Tomitronic 3D. It was this little space tank game, and you just had these little digital LED things that you would move on screen, and that was the game. They really weren't all that compelling, and again, you had to buy a separate device for each game. I would definitely check out some YouTube videos. I'll put some down below in the playlist, including how this one looked when you were looking through it, about what gaming was like, portable gaming was like before the Game Boy. The fact that you could have interchangeable games and have them relatively close to what the console experience was at the time was a pretty groundbreaking thing. So that is why the Game Boy took off. It was also very affordable, relatively speaking. So I think at the time, the NES was about $150 or so, and that was for like the base model with the Mario game packed in. The Sega Genesis was $189 at the time, but the Game Boy, its launch price was $89. It was a much more affordable way to get in. The games were less expensive too. I think the games were about $20 a piece when they first came out versus $50 at the time that the Nintendo games were selling at that point. So a lot more affordable, and it was portable, and I think that is why it did so well, even though there were other consoles like the Lynx that did better. But again, we were going from something like this, which was one game per device, to a multi-game device. And now in the future, you can take a single cartridge and load up all the games you want on it. Pretty cool stuff. So now we are in week 7 of me doing this as a full-time occupation, and it continues to go well. It was a crazy week, actually, last week, because I had traveling with the New York City trip going on. I had family over on the weekend, so that made it hard to get all my weekend stuff done. I usually straighten up the place here and get things moved around and organized, and I was not able to do that last weekend, so things are kind of a mess right now. I'm looking at this disaster area. I started working on some things this weekend, but because I was behind from the trip and the family visits, I had to shoot some stuff on Saturday, which I don't like to do anymore now that I can do a lot during the week. So I'm a little messed up in my workflow here, but I'll get that resolved pretty soon. And also last week was my school board budget presentation to my community, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that and putting it together, so that ate into some of my production time as well. So this week is a catch-up week. I'm going to get a bunch of stuff done today, hopefully, and that will give me some time to get straightened up. But it's one of those things where managing time is really critical, and last week I just wasn't able to manage it as well, just given I was traveling, but I still managed to get 4 videos up. I almost only had 3 videos because one of the things that you have to abide by when you go to the YouTube space is that you have to have them review the content before you post it, not for what's in it, but they want to make sure that you're not violating anybody's copyright. So I have to submit all the licenses to the music that I use. Even that little intro piece that goes for just a second or two was a piece of buyout music that I had, so I have to make sure I get all that documentation in order, send it over to the space, and it takes them about 2 days or so to get to the video to approve it. So when I posted the interview, I was getting really nervous because it was almost 2 days and I hadn't heard from them, and then around midnight they finally approved it, and that's when it went up. So that was why we had 4 videos this week and not 3, but it was almost a 3-video week. But getting caught up today, so everything is good, and we'll continue onward from there. So I have a lot of stuff on my mind this week, so we're going to go run through it now. The first one was just a funny thing that happened here in Connecticut. So Comcast has their Comcast Cares thing where they do volunteer work, and this week they actually sponsored a paper shredding day, which is kind of funny after all we talked about with the privacy bills in Congress and everything, that they would be promoting people shredding their documents for privacy when they can sell your private information to anyone else out there. And on a related note, Bose, you probably heard about this, has an app that was leaking information out to a third party on purpose, and Bose says they weren't selling the information, but they haven't really specified what they're doing with it. I'll put a link down below there to an article that talks more about this, but I reviewed these Bose QC35s, and I was really kind of surprised that the app that came with it didn't really do anything. It did firmware updates, and then it also allowed you to manage which Bluetooth pairings you had with the device, but apparently what it was also doing was downloading the tracks that you were playing from the headphones over to the app, which then sent it out to a third party that was being contracted by Bose to do stuff. And kind of concerning, actually, because they really haven't been clear as to what they're doing with the data. They're saying they're not selling it, but there are examples of companies who are taking anonymized data and selling that to third parties for other things. So we're not sure exactly what was going on here. There's now a lawsuit, class action suit, which means I'll get nothing and the lawyers will get everything, but this is what's going on right now. And if you have that app on your phone for your Bose QC35s and other Bose headsets, I would just uninstall the app, because once you take the app off, it can no longer send anything out to Bose or the third party that they've contracted with. And it's really interesting how this works, because what happens is, as you know, when you play a track on your phone in Bluetooth, the track information gets transmitted to the device that is playing it. And in this case, the headphones were just recording that information information and then running it through the app and sending it back to the mothership afterwards. So just another example of how you are constantly under watch by modern technology. On a related note, though, if you have a Google Home, it now has an update. I'm going to play with this a little later in the week, that you can now have it recognize the voices that are talking to it. So when it came out, and just like the Amazon Alexa thing, when someone says something to the Google Home, it assumes that it's going to run off the account that set it up. But now if I talk to it and ask it what's going on today, it will know that it's me and not my wife. My wife's account can also be connected to it. So I'm going to play with this. I'll let you know how it works maybe next week, and we'll go from there. But I've been using the Google Home quite a bit. I don't use it for much other than having it do kitchen timing and weather reports and stuff, but it's kind of a neat little device, and I've been enjoying keeping it plugged into my house there. On another note, the FTC is sending out reminders to influencers like me, but they haven't sent me a notice, thankfully, about the fact that you need to clearly disclose your branding relationships. And we have discussions about this from time to time on the channel because, as you all know, I do a pretty lengthy disclaimer at the beginning of every video about what my relationship is with the company and how I got the product. And I do that because of this. And this is going to be becoming more and more prevalent now as the FTC is really getting more aggressive in their stance here on how influencers need to disclose paid sponsorships. And paid sponsorships are not just things where you're getting paid to do something, but if somebody sends you a product for free and doesn't want it back, you need to say that they're not asking for the product back and you got the product for free. So just a little note from the FTC, and if you are producing content, you should be mindful of that. And then I saw this morning, and this is just yet another crazy Indiegogo thing that I don't think is ever going to happen. And I did put a little bid in on it just because if it does come out, it might be an interesting talking point. This is an iPhone case that has an Android phone inside of it. And as you all know, it's getting very inexpensive to make Android devices now, so they're doing this essentially because they can. I don't know if it's anything useful that's going to take off. I even doubt this is ever going to happen, but it's gotten all over the tech press. The Unbox Therapy guy did something on it also, so I figured out, what the heck, we'll get one, hopefully, maybe not, and we'll see where it goes, because I say maybe not, because a lot of times these things never actually happen. The company can't get it together in the end, and they go out of business before it occurs. There was another one that I bid on about a year ago that was going to bring an e-ink display to an iPhone case. That company went kaput and took my money with them, so I'm not hopeful here, but this is supposedly going to be out by August, and there is a prototype floating around, so if we get one in, I will show you how it works, but I don't think it's going to sell very well, because if you want an Android phone, just buy the Android phone. I don't know why you want to have one attached to your iPhone, but if you do, there you go. And now it's time for some Q&A from you, the viewer. And our first question comes in from Steve Minnick, who is wondering if I have compared the Minix U9 to the Fire TV or the NVIDIA Shield. And if you are not sure what the Minix is, it's a generic, I call them this, a generic Android TV box that runs with a custom launcher and gets you some of the TV features that you might get out of something more expensive, but doesn't, in my opinion, get you all the way. Now, Minix is kind of the top of the line of these generic boxes. They're really nice from a hardware perspective, but I really have found the interface on these generic Android TV boxes to not be so great for consumers. So in the case of the NVIDIA Shield, you have the official Google TV interface installed on it. It is running Android, but the apps treat that interface differently than they do what you'll see on a generic Android box. The Fire TV, of course, has the Amazon television interface, but in both of those cases, you're dealing with something that is really designed to be plugged into a television and operated from a remote control. In the case of these generic Android boxes, they all come with some kind of custom launcher, but once you launch an app, you're basically operating the tablet version of that app on a TV with a remote control, and the apps behave as such. It's a really frustrating experience. You can check out the B-Link review I did recently. Now, if you're running Kodi exclusively or something where you are an enthusiast and kind of know what you're doing with your home theater, then maybe there's an argument to be had for some of these boxes, but I think for most consumers, they're going to want to get the best possible TV experience, and you're not going to get that with one of these generic Android boxes, even though they are less expensive. And Netflix is a great example, because on many of these generic boxes, you can, of course, download Netflix from the Google Play Store, but you only get a 1080p output, if that, and you don't get 4K, you don't get all the HDR features and all the other stuff that is coming into some of those TV versions of those apps. So it really is not a good consumer experience. There are ways around it. You can put on different APKs and everything else, but then you're getting into security issues. And I think for a lot of consumers who don't want to hassle, going with an official TV box is the way to go. If the NVIDIA Shield is too expensive, I think the Mi Box is a decent enough alternative, but there aren't too many, unfortunately, official Android TV boxes out there, which kind of surprises me because that is my go-to box here in the house. In fact, I have an Apple TV that is sitting in the closet back there because I just don't use it. The NVIDIA Shields really do it for me. So that's my 2 cents on it. I would love to get maybe some thoughts from you on some of these generic Android boxes that maybe I should look at, perhaps just as Kodi boxes. And I'll make the caveat, of course, to consumers that these are not really consumer friendly, but very good for enthusiasts perhaps. So if you have any thoughts on some things that I should pick up, do let me know down below in the comments. Now this next question was inevitable because we were reviewing a flash cartridge for a retro game platform, but this person was wondering if I'm promoting software piracy, and we had a big discussion about that. They ended their argument by saying it still doesn't change the fact that the makers of this product are profiting from pirated software. And I would buy that argument if this product was available 20 years ago, and there were some that were, when the Game Boy was commercially available along with its games. At the moment, the Game Boy is not commercially available, and nobody really is making Game Boy cartridges, at least the commercially available games that were available back in the 80s and 90s when the Game Boy was at the height of its commercial availability. And I think what should happen is if some of these developers, and I don't think really they are all that concerned about this, but if they are concerned about losing money due to people downloading Game Boy ROMs, they should put up a store where you can download those ROMs and pay for them. And I think a lot of people, myself included, would do that because right now, some games I have bought a couple of times because maybe I lost them over the years, or in the case, for example, of Mario 64, I had it on the Nintendo 64. I bought it on my Nintendo DS because I wanted to take it on the road with me back in the day. I also own the copy from the Wii Virtual Console, and I'll probably buy it again at some point because I like having that game available to me. And I think at this point, I probably earned the right to play it on a flash cartridge if I wish, or earn the right to play it on a emulator. I know it's probably not legal to do that, but the reality is I've paid Nintendo a lot of money for this game, and I'd like to just play the game where I want to play it. And I think that's something consumers should have the choice to do. And in the case of games that just are no longer available to anyone, anywhere, I don't think there's really any issue with this, especially because you can, of course, buy the cartridge and put the cartridge in your Game Boy and play it, but many cartridges out there now are selling for ridiculous amounts of money, more so, of course, on the NES than some of the other platforms. But if you're paying a couple $100s for a game secondhand on eBay, is the developer making any money from that? The answer is no. So this is kind of a gray area, but I do think there probably could be some room for developers to start selling the ROMs if they were really that concerned about it. I actually think this is probably helping them more than hurting, because if a developer has a modern version of an old game, getting that old game out into the hands of players right now is a great way to market the new one. Shantae, which I reviewed in that initial Game Boy cartridge review, is a great example. They've got a great new version of that on most of the modern platforms, and I think it's a nice entry point. You can, of course, buy it on the 3DS in emulation, which you should do if you have the ROM, but again, it doesn't really hurt the developers all that much. But if they were being hurt, they should just sell the ROM. It would be something I would buy and a lot of other people would buy too. Now, it's funny, there was an article on Eurogamer back in January about this very issue, and Nintendo, of course, sells emulated versions of their games on the Virtual Console, on the Wii and the Wii U, and of course on the 3DS. And somebody took apart the ROM file that was included with that particular Virtual Console game on the Wii, and they found that the headers of that ROM were identical to the same headers you would get if you downloaded the ROM illegally. Now, Nintendo hasn't commented as to where they got the ROM from. They did say it was a legal version of it, but of course it is, because they own it. At least they own the IP to it. But it's very likely they either downloaded the ROM from somewhere, or more likely they probably used the same tools that people who dump ROMs use to get these games to work in emulation. So in many ways, even though they often fight against emulation, they're also benefiting from a lot of the open source tools that have existed because of it to make their games commercially viable in a modern way. And I think it's great that Nintendo is making some of their titles available to gamers in this way. I'd like more flexibility in the availability. I'd love to be able to pay Nintendo for one of their ROMs to play on my original Game Boy. There's really no cost to them to do that, but that's just the way they decided to sell their games at the moment. But this is why these flash cartridges exist. Now, another great example, though, is GOG.com. Now, I played a lot of DOS games back in my youth, and I can find many of them legally available on GOG that will run on my Mac, on my Windows computer, in a very nice packaged DOS box installation. They run great. Many times I can take those ROM or those files out because I legally purchased them and actually play them on my other DOSBox emulator on my Mac here that also does Roland MT32 sound emulation. It's the actual software that I'm buying here, and it's a great thing. GOG really got their start selling these old DOS games, and it was great that the developers like Electronic Arts did here, for example, with Wing Commander. You can buy the entire Wing Commander library for a couple of dollars, own it legally, and you could take those files and boot them up on your old DOS machine if you want to, because it's the same stuff. It's the exact same software, and this is wonderful. And in the case of Wing Commander 3 and 4, for example, that came on multiple CDs, you get everything nicely packaged into a single bootable little thing, and it's good to go. So really good convenience here, and they're making it available to gamers, and many gamers, myself included, bought the games again because they were legally available. So I think really the key to all of this would be having a ROM store that you could go out and buy some of these games. The problem is not that many people are doing this, and that is why it doesn't exist. But it'd be nice to have it because I think there would be a small market for it at least, and I think we'd get rid of a lot of these questions surrounding the legality of ROMs being available to play on these flash cartridges to load up on old consoles. And really, in the case of the Game Boy, is really the most great example of this, is that everyone's Game Boy experience was largely the same back in the day, because when you bought a Game Boy, its screen, its sound, its controller was the same across every unit. So the games were written for that hardware because everyone's experience was identical. And yes, you can play a Game Boy game on the 3DS. Is it as good as it was on the original? I don't think so. I really want to play the original game on the original hardware, especially in the case of the Game Boy. Now, this next question comes in from Lon.TV, a fellow Lon, which is nice to see, but he's not too happy with me. He feels like I've been too gaming-centric in my content over the last week or two, and he wants me to get back on IT content or I'm going to lose him, and many others as well. And I wanted to bring this question up because this is one of the challenges I have as a tech channel, because my interests are quite diverse when it comes to technology. If you go back and look at my content, you'll see that I've got a lot of different interests in a lot of different places. Now, retro stuff like those gaming cartridges have a special place in my heart because I got my start in my interest and love of technology from playing games when I was a kid. I learned computers trying to get the games to run on my old DOS computer. I really appreciated everything that went into the games that I played as a kid. And what's been so fun about growing up in the 80s as I did is that everything that came out that was technologically related was brand new, never existed before, like I just talked about with the Game Boy. It's just something so new and exciting, and it's kind of fun to relive that from time to time. And it was funny, before I got that comment, I was looking back at the last 2 weeks or so of content. I said, wow, I was kind of gaming heavy this week. I better mix it up a little bit. And part of the problem is that so many of you subscribers come to me from different videos that I posted. And as I've mentioned in the past, only about 25% of my overall traffic comes from subscribers. Now, that subscriber portion of viewership is growing significantly, but it's still a smaller portion overall. But I do these weekly wrap-up videos because I want to reach all of you, because a lot of the content that I do is more aimed at a search engine versus actually trying to engage a subscriber base, which is why I try to do weekly wrap-ups every week so that I can engage you and get your feedback, because everything you contribute to the channel really helps me in attracting new viewers and new subscribers. But the downside to this being so diverse in my interests is that not every video is going to appeal to every subscriber, and that is often the challenge. In fact, if you look at my views after I upload a video, if you go like maybe a week out from that video posting, despite the fact that I have 135,000 views, I only get about 5,000 or so initial views before the search engine traffic kicks in through the Google algorithms and whatnot. So it is a very challenging thing running this channel, but I tend to just go where my interests are that week, and it just so happened over the last 2 weeks or so, there's just a lot of gaming stuff that came in on the channel, but I will always do my best to be as diverse as possible, and I'm always looking for suggestions from all of you as to things I should review. I don't get to everything, but I am reading all of those comments and suggestions, and I'm putting them in the back of my head. I'm buying a lot of the stuff, and some of it's getting on the schedule too, so I definitely want to keep that flow going. And don't worry, this is not going to become any specific channel. It's going to continue to be a mishmash of a lot of different technology that I find interesting, and hopefully you will too. And my Q&A for you this week comes in from a viewer. His name is Marcus Carrillo, who tweeted this to me. It looks like the Octane benchmark test, which is what we use to measure performance of a lot of our low-end PCs here on the channel, as well as the Chromebooks, Well, that test is being retired, which means it's going to go away soon, and I have to find some alternative, which really concerns me because I've got about 4 years worth of Octane data as these computers have progressed over time, and now it looks like the test is going away. So I'm definitely looking for some suggestions here. Octane has been really helpful because it's been very interesting to me to see just the pace of technology over the last 3 or 4 years, especially on the low end, to see how Intel chips have come together, how the ARM processors are really starting to catch up as well. And without being able to continually run this test, which is a really helpful way to figure out how all of this stuff compares to each other, we got to find something new. So let me know what you think I should start using. They are pointing people towards more real world kind of examples, and maybe we should look for some things that we can test for that. And part of the reason why they are getting out of this business is that they say that over optimization is hurting the results, and that people are optimizing for the test as opposed to optimizing for a real world performance example. So there's probably some good reasons why they're getting rid of this, but we got to find an alternative here so that we can continue comparing computers to each other. I would imagine the test will still be out there for some time to come, but we're going to have to find an alternative, and I would love to get some thoughts from all of you on that. So this week I've got a bunch of stuff planned, including an interview with Seth Marin, who wrote the book, The Power of Positive Destruction. I get pitched on a lot of author interviews, and this one really intrigued me because he's somebody who's been applying efficiencies into the Wall Street business, at least, and it was kind of a neat parallel to some of the things that I've been noticing in media. So we talk about some things that young people should be thinking about, as well as some things that some older folks like me and others should be thinking about when they're maybe going to start a business at the midpoint of their life. And a really good discussion. Certainly a very different one perhaps than technology products, but I think you'll enjoy it nonetheless. That one hopefully will be up later this week, so stay tuned for that. We also are going to take a look hopefully at the bevel, which I've been talking about the last couple of days. I just haven't gotten to reviewing this one yet. It's a little laser that you attach to your iPhone, and it makes these 3D images. Not the best thing in the world. It's got some faults, but we'll take a look at it nonetheless. And then later today I'm going to be working on this review for one of these outdoor Unify access points. I use these things all over my house. This is the outdoor version, so I'm going to show you how to set it up, and then we're going to test it out in my backyard. I was going to do this last week, but the weather was so lousy. I finally got a nice sunny day, and today is my day because it's going to be raining the next couple of days. It will work in the rain, but my computers don't. So if I'm going to test the bandwidth on this thing out in my yard, I got to do it when the sun is out, so we'll be looking at that. And I just got in this little scanner from Epson. It's a little document scanner that can scan on both sides of the page at the same time. I do these reviews from time to time. People find them interesting, so we'll be looking at that. I'm sure there'll be some other stuff too that will pop up over the course of the week as well. Now, my channel of the week is a fun one. This is called YoVo68, but it's actually the official channel of this 11-foot, 8-inch high bridge in South Carolina. And they have documented now over 100 different incidents where trucks are smacking into this bridge because it is a low bridge but doesn't look so low, and these trucks often get the tops of them peeled off like can openers, and there's often some really crazy things that happen on this bridge. And what's so funny is that I've been following this channel for a while. Over the years, they keep adding new warnings to let people know they should stop and turn around, and every day or every month somebody's smacking into this bridge. A few less than before. Now they've got this new notification system up, but there are at least once or twice a month a new video coming up on this channel of some truck just smacking into this bridge and not following directions. And if you're into this kind of thing, it's kind of fun to watch. It's not harmless for the truck, but no one ever gets hurt, and it's kind of funny just to see this keeps happening. So definitely check out that channel there. Here's an example of one of those things going down, so you can see all the cars running here, and here comes a moving truck, and there goes the can opener. So this is an example of some of the stuff that goes on there. You can just watch these over and over again. Again, there's several hundred, I think over 115 videos now on the channel. So definitely fun and definitely worth a watch if you are into killing some time. If you want to help the channel, you can. You can go to Lon.TV/Patreon and make a monthly contribution to the channel. We also have my tip jar at Lon.TV/tipjar. And I just got on Venmo the other day to pay somebody who helped me out with something. So if you want to do Venmo, you can go to Lon at Lon.TV on there and help the channel out that way. We also have the ongoing program with Plex. If you sign up for a free Plex account, we get a commission. You can also gift a Plex pass to somebody, and we'll get a commission for that too. You can follow it on the links on the little display there. And if you want to engage with the channel, we've got the Extras channel at Lon.TV/Extras, where I do unboxings and mini reviews. We have the email list at Lon.TV/email, the Facebook page at Lon.TV/Facebook, and my store, which is now stocked with a whole bunch of stuff. I've got got more stuff coming up. These are items that I reviewed on the channel and I'm now reselling, or just some things I'm trying to get rid of around the house here. I'm doing a lot of spring cleaning, so there's a lot of technology products that I am going to be getting rid of. So keep an eye on the store. I'm going to be shipping out 3 things today, and I'm sure more will come. Hoping to do some more live streams. Not sure if I'm going to get any in this week, but I usually pop on randomly, so you may want to set your notification to let you know when I've got something new going on. But if you want to watch my archive, you can watch them at Lon.TV/live streams. And that's going to do it for this week's weekly wrap-up. Please keep those comments and suggestions coming. I do appreciate all of them, even the ones that are critical of the things that I'm doing, because everything helps me do a better job. And now that this is my job, I'm very serious about continuing my channel growth. So I really do value everything that you all are writing. I don't respond to every comment now because I get so many, but I honestly read every single one of them. So please keep your comments coming, and I will get to as many as I can, but I am seeing everyone, and I appreciate everyone for your great feedback over the course of this adventure here, which will continue onward throughout this week and hopefully many more to come. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporters Mark Bollinger and Brian Miller. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.